Welcome, everyone. I see people are coming in right at 12. Well, it's 12:01. Welcome, everyone. We will give it a couple of minutes. We'll start in about 2 minutes so we can get everyone to log in. Okay, so I think we should get started. So I want to welcome everyone to our Critical Convo series. This is our second installment of the series, our Changemaker series. And I wanted to start off by just asking people, since it is lunchtime, to drop in the chat your favorite restaurant. And it could be a lunch, something where you like to have lunch at, or a place, just your favorite restaurant. It doesn't even have to be in an area. Oh, nice, Atwater's. Nice. Heritage Smokehouse. I like that, Amy.
Best barbecue around.
Great.
And my husband's from North Carolina, and I lived in North Carolina for a number of years, and we are in full agreement that he knows barbecue.
It's the best. Okay. Sounds good. Isabel. I think Isabel has stock in Petermore. That is right there on Green Street. North Carolina barbecue is the best. You see that? Oh, now where's that lane? I love empanadas. Nice. Oh, Jimmy John's just for lunch only, right, Anthony?
Keep it simple.
Or you, like my husband, he can eat that PJ lunch and dinner. Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you all for participating in that. We that was actually by the request of one of our panelists today. So are you going to be heading out to somebody? You better take note of this. Awesome. So again, welcome to our Critical Convo series. And we have one more next week, our final one, which will be on October 25th. And so I hope you all can join us for that. We will put the registration in the chat. And I will now, I never introduced myself. I'm sorry, I'm Krishna Williams, the Director of Alumni Relations and Development. And so I will now turn it over to our moderator, Amy Greensfelder.
Great. Well, thank you, Krishna, and thank you all for joining us today for today's conversation. My name is Amy Greensfelder. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Executive Director at Pro Bono Counseling, which is a nonprofit that increases access to mental health care. I'm a 2017 graduate of the UMB School of Social Work, and I serve on the Alumni Board. And Lane Victorson, whose lunch recommendations were there in the chat, was my field supervisor when I was in school. So it's great to be virtually at the school and seeing folks who've supported us all along the way. I'll be serving as the facilitator of today's conversation, and I'm so glad that you've joined us. The event's going to run until 1:15 p.m. And if you paid for CEUs, you'll be emailed a certificate from the UMB CPE department at the close of today's workshop. And as we go, there's going to be lots of opportunities for conversation and questions and comments. So feel free to use the Q&A box or the chat box for any questions that come up. What we're going to do today is introduce the panelists just briefly so you get to know who's on the call. And then we're going to do a more in-depth introduction of each of them. And then there'll be opportunity for conversation. So as you go, just feel free to add those questions that are coming to mind, and I'll collate them all, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. And just as we get started, we wanted to do a little bit of a poll so we could get a sense of who's here with us today. I know you all can see us, and we can read what you're saying in the chat, but we want to get to know you. So if you could just let us know how long you've been in the social work profession. A poll should have showed up on your screen just now, and you can select if you're a current student, if you've been in the field for 1 to 5 years, 6 to 10 years, 11 to 15 years, or 16 plus. So let's see who's out there. We'll give a few moments for you to complete that poll. And Shantae, are you able to see if the poll results are coming in? If you want to give maybe just share out the results once a critical mass has answered, but take another moment or so to answer that poll question so we know who's here.
We are also, I have it right here, Amy.
Great.
So it looks like we have, mainly 16 plus.
Wow.
43%. So, wow. And so then we have next would be, we have a tie for 6 to 10 and 11 to 15.
Great. Well, thank you all for participating in the poll. It's great to have an understanding of who's here with us. And as we just move on, I would like to invite Anthony Carter to introduce yourself and share, just briefly introduce yourself, then we'll come back for more in-depth introductions.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to be here and participate in this conversation. My name is Anthony Carter. I am my pronouns are he and him. I am a 2018 graduate from the University of Maryland in Baltimore. So I did actually the clinical and macro track. So I was a sort of dual track. And then my specialization was children's, youth, and families. Currently, I'm with the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, which is the National Association of providers that deliver mental health and substance use services. And particularly, we focus on advocacy, training programs, and then also practice improvement and consulting efforts to really sort of help shape the field, hopefully for the better. I'm a director in our practice improvement and consulting team, and so I manage a team of coordinators and managers who are all working to deliver services directly to providers. So happy to be here today and looking forward to the conversation. Welcome,
Anthony. And Mary Jalil, if you could go next.
Hey everybody, I'm Mary Jalil. My pronouns are she, they, or MJ. I am a 2021 graduate of school social work. I currently am a research project coordinator at the Institute for Innovation and Implementation. Yeah, I'll talk more in a second. Nice to see all of y'all again.
And Elizabeth.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm excited to be here. My name is Elizabeth Stafford. My pronouns are she, her. And I am a 2019 graduate of the School of Social Work. And I currently have been now for just a little over 3 years as an outpatient mental health therapist at Grace Medical Center, which is located in West Baltimore. If you haven't heard of it, we're Bon Secours, Baltimore, and we are now, we were bought out by LifeBridge, and we are now part of LifeBridge, which includes Sinai and Carroll Hospital in Northwest and Levendale. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Elizabeth. And now we'll circle back so you can get to know each of our change makers a little more in depth. So Anthony, I invite you to share next.
Yeah, so I, can talk a little bit more about why I chose the field of social work, and then also why University of Maryland. So I have a background in the nonprofit space. And so I've, as soon as I graduated in 2008 from my undergrad degree, I went to go work for nonprofits, and really have sort of found that to be my, I would say, sweet spot, a place that I really enjoy sort of making a difference in and contributing my time and energy to. And so I worked in a foundation setting for a couple of years, and then actually moved to the Washington, D.C. area in 2010, and sort of have not looked back in terms of, my work with, directly working with individuals, and then also in the nonprofit space. I was working at a nonprofit organization called Public Allies, which is a national organization that places young adults in a 10-month apprenticeship program. I was a program manager, and I really, really loved my work. But at the end of the day, I was kind of in this weird spot, because while I was the training manager for our, it's an AmeriCorps, it's a AmeriCorps grantee, so they're all serving in AmeriCorps positions. And while I was there, I was sort of making these gut decisions around, walking people through some challenging times and situations that they may have been going through that were sort of getting in their way of being able to complete the apprenticeship. And so I knew I wanted to go get my master's degree. I just didn't know in what. And my time at Public Allies really, showed me that social work was the way to sort of achieve that ability to work and sort of coach people through challenging times, but also work on sort of larger systems to help alleviate those issues, hopefully for the long term. And so I ended up looking at a few different programs, but University of Maryland in Baltimore was by far the number one program. I think it just sort of stood out among its peers in terms of sort of reputation, in terms of some of the programs that they offer, particularly around macro and clinical options. And then I was a children's, youth, and families specialization student. And so, the opportunities to really engage in those types of topics and conversations was really key for me. I was also a Title IV student. And so all my placements were with local departments of social services. And I ended up, pursuing that as a career for a while after I graduated. I'll kind of pause there and then maybe turn it over to my fellow panelists, and then we can kind of dig deeper, but that's why I chose the program.
Thank you, Anthony. And Mary Jalil, would you like to go next?
Sure, that's really fun that you chose social work through Public Allies, because I was an ally at the School of Social Work when SWACOs housed the Public Allies program. And it's also funny because my program manager is now in the MSW program. So it is Public Allies is feeding MSW programs. Definitely our schools. So like I just said, Public Allies is what introduced me to the field of social work. I'd been doing community programming and nonprofit work after graduating from Towson. I'm from Baltimore, so participating in organizations, my mom was a PTA mom, Girl Scout troop mom, all that stuff. So participating in organizations was my stick my whole life. My mom is also from Holland Park, McCullough Homes. So West Baltimore, University of Maryland as a school, as an institution, is a part of my reality throughout my existence in Baltimore City, all 29 years. So after graduating from college, finding Public Allies as a program, because I was interested in the AmeriCorps type of thing or Peace Corps type of thing, it being right in the city was beneficial. Like I said, West Side is a big part of my life. So it was kind of like a no-brainer for me. And then in participating, I met so many people who did work that I had got a lot of facts about in undergrad as a psychology, sociology, anthropology major. We talked about a lot of things that social workers do. So it was really cool to meet a ton of people that were social workers that were doing different work, be it holistic work, community organizing, developing health department programming around food and food injustice, financial work, grant writing. It was just like, oh snap, that's what I want to know. That's what's up. I knew I needed to get a graduate degree, and met all these people doing work that I was interested in doing that I was not sure how I would get engaged, because in school it was more about the theory side of it as opposed to how this stuff trickles down into community. So it was kind of a no-brainer. And then Public Allies paid my tuition application fee, and there was not a GPA. I met the minimum GPA requirement, which as a person who is dyslexic and has a handful of like cognitive disabilities, that was a big deal because I hadn't really done the best in school before then. So it was really great to be able to get into a graduate program without having to take the GRE. That changed. I did really good in graduate school, and now I work for the Institute, which is a part of the School of Social Work. Before then, I've been on the SWACO's Community Advisory Board. I did a lot of organizing throughout school. I was on like every club. I was that person that was on the SGA, on the USGA, in the Black Student Club, in the Macro Club, a part of a ton of clubs. And I was able to really organize and be a part of different task force and whatnot during school. I also worked really closely with Lane multiple years in school. So yeah, that's how I found myself at the School of Social Work, and kind of staying at the School of Social Work. I'm interested in continuing my education. So to be a state employee is really cool. Opportunity for tuition remission or reimbursement. Yeah, that's my spiel. Thanks.
Great. I love all the connections that we're already making. We had met the other day to kind of go over this panel, and I don't think we'd connected that Mary Jaleel and Anthony both had these experiences of public allies, and I would be remiss not to mention I'm a Girl Scout leader and Girl Scout mom myself, so shout out to Girl Scouts too. So lots of connections just here, and if you're noticing connections, I noticed a few people shouting out public allies and other experiences in the chat too, so love all the overlap. Elizabeth, would you like to go next?
Sure. So I am, like I said, I'm a 2019 grad. I actually am a career changer. I went back after working for 12 years in the nonprofit world in fundraising offices, mostly doing event planning and alumni relations. And so I was 34 when I went back to school. So it was a complete career change. And I had known for a long time. Okay, so I was a history major undergrad, which was really fun in the first year of grad school because everybody's like majored in psychology and sociology. And I was like, oh my gosh, they know all this stuff. And they're like, what did you major in? And I'm like, history. So it was a total like shift for me. So I had been in these worlds of these fundraising worlds and got a lot of skills and learned a lot and worked with some great people, but just really felt like I hadn't really found something that I really connected with. So I, for a while, thought I wanted to be a nurse. I kind of like jumped around from different service things that I thought I might want to do. And I kept jumping from job to job. Like I was moving up and making more money. So that was great. But every time I'd be like, oh, I really, what am I even doing? And so I kind of like took a couple of years to really like do some research and talk with people and figure out like the different types of programs there were. I looked into counseling, I looked into social work, some other things. I mean, it was actually a girl, a woman, Emily Linson-Meyer, who's a 2018 grad, and she and I had worked together in a development office years before, and she went back to this program. So that made me even more eager in it, excited about it. And so then I applied and I got in, and I like to say that it's like one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life because it really changed the trajectory of what I'm doing. And so I wake up every day and I'm like, oh, I like what I do. Like it might be a hard day, but I actually get to go and like it. And I had just had been at such a place for so long that I just wanted to be really deep with people. And I always knew I was a people person and I was working with people in these other jobs. But I wanted to really just like kind of get down into the nitty gritty to be able to help people and sit with people because I felt like it was a gift that I had. So my first year internship, well, a couple of things. The two things I was involved in, I worked in the dean's office as a student worker because of my fundraising background. And then I was part of the BWise fellowship program. I know there's like multiple of them now. I was in charge of one of the original ones. So I was a clinical focus. And my first year, bringing it a little full circle, my first year internship was actually at McCullough Towers, right next to McCullough Homes, where MJ said her mom lived at one point. So it was right there. And I had an amazing internship program. I don't know if my field placement supervisor is on here, Shannon Brown. And so I really loved what I did. And it was a lot of like case management and working with folks who lived in those buildings and bringing them resources. And then my second year, because I knew I wanted to do something clinical, I ended up at Shepherd Pratt at the Center for Eating Disorders. So I knew after I graduated that I really wanted to be back in West Baltimore because my heart was really there, but I wanted to do something clinical. And that's how I ended up here at Grace Medical Center doing outpatient mental health therapy for adults.
Great. Well, thank you, Elizabeth. And now time for some questions. And if anybody in the audience has questions, you can feel free to put them into the chat or the Q&A box. But just to kick us off, the theme today is Changemaker. So I'd like to ask each of the panelists, what does it mean to you to be a changemaker? And has that changed? All three of you mentioned your experiences that you were working in and the experiences you had before you started school, the experiences you had in school, and now what you're doing after. Over time, has your idea of what it means to be a changemaker changed, and what is your current conception to mean to be a changemaker? And I'll just throw it out and you can go in any order you please. And if you don't choose an order, I'll choose for you.
I can go. Okay, so to be a change maker. So for me, going back to social work school was really because I wanted to be a change maker. And that hasn't changed, but how I view it has changed in the sense that when I first went into grad school, I was like, I want to change the world. And it's not that I don't want to change the world. I just realize that more than ever that really takes all of us doing our own individual roles, whether it's macro or clinical or research or working with clients, like wherever you're working, it takes all of us, like as a collective, to be able to make that bigger change. And so that's something that was really important for me to realize. And then the thing that I've realized in my job here, being a change maker, it sometimes that means showing up for your clients and being there and walking with them where they are. And in my mind, change maker in the beginning meant like not run for president, but something so big, like, and it's like, no, it's all the things that we do collectively as a change maker to get to this bigger picture of fighting for social justice and helping our clients. So that was a kind of a big realization for me.
Yeah, I can jump in after that. Because I really agree, and a lot of that what you just said, Elizabeth, really resonates. I think we sort of approach this as like, I'm going to do big things, and like, what does that even mean, really, when you sort of start to boil that down? And for me, as I've sort of, from graduation or even from entering the programs, like where I feel I'm at now, I feel like my role in sort of helping create that big change is really around supporting and helping others sort of be able to contribute in ways that they may not have been able to, whether that's at the individual level or at the organizational level. Really, I think my niche, what I get excited about is sort of helping build and shape systems that allow people to do good work or allow people to make whatever impact they would like to make is. And so, when I graduated, I actually, as I mentioned, I was a Title IV student in the program. And so I did both of my field placements with local departments of social services. The first one, my foundation year, was at Baltimore City. And then my second year was in Montgomery County. And I actually ended up joining Montgomery County after graduation as a full-time child protective services social worker. And I think that was a really, interesting role. It taught me so much, but it taught me what the limits are in terms of what an individual can do. I can't change the system myself, one family at a time. I can make a big impact, but that wasn't, while that was satisfying and while that I felt like I was doing good work, I felt that there was another way to do this work. And so that's what actually, I was a CPS social worker for about 3 years, ended up getting my clinical license. And so I'm at LCSWC in the state of Maryland. But that really sort of using that experience that I had working directly with families, particularly looking at, bettering systems for, families who are in this child welfare system, really led me to my interest in policy and data. And so I actually ended up switching roles to become the data manager for Montgomery County Child Welfare Services. And I thought that was a really interesting sort of unique perspective to bring sort of a data policy mindset with a direct service background. And that really helped propel me to the position that I'm in right now with the National Council for Mental Wellbeing, where, my job day to day is to sort of help lead and shape systems so that providers can do their best work. And I sort of coming through that sort of track really taught me a lot about myself and what I feel like I'm good at and what I feel like my purpose is. And it started with me really defining what being a change maker really even means for myself.
And I'll close it out. I definitely agree that being a change maker involves all of the levels of work that I think social workers do. I think a lot of people seeking to be change makers come to social work because I think social workers do the change. Like, that's society work. That is what we really do. For me, my perspective of being a change maker hasn't changed, and I am a big picture person. That is what I want to do. I have aspirations of going into government, of doing big policy work, but I think it comes from doing direct service work now, having an understanding of data, so utilizing that to get kind of further in macro work and understand how funding works. I did a lot of direct service and work with a lot of programming that was grant funded. So I wanted to figure, like, I had to submit the numbers. So I thought it was really cool to take qualitative research and learn how the numbers exist. And I wanted to further my understanding of that to see what I do next. Right now, I do TASE-specific, TASE transitional age youth. So I help with the evaluation and implementation practices for TASE-specific programming in PG and on the Eastern Shore. One in foster care, one SAMHSA funded. So it's really cool to be able to help the providers understand why the things that they have to submit for data is necessary, and to make sure that we're tracking necessary information and not asking unnecessary things, and to see how I'm able to utilize that to help organizations or to start my own organization, and how money just in general is being funneled through organizations to the work that happens in the city, and just period in society, and what someone in government with that knowledge can do. I think we see a lot of good politicians right now, and people like at the Senate level, social media is really rampant. So we get to see senators in Georgia and in the Midwest doing things that we might not have seen like 10 years ago. We might not have really known what they were doing, but we can see how they're implementing that practices. And I inspire to use all of these things I learned to do the same thing in due time. So I think it's cool that we got to see the spectrum of what Changemaker, like how we believe that it is big, but we also know that it's those other things. And hopefully in 5 years, I'll be somewhere else, kind of doing the work that speaks to how important the work that we've all just talked about is, and how if we're not well supported, if we're not well funded, if we're not gainfully employed, and roles aren't filled, then we actually can't make this bigger change in society. Yeah.
Great, thank you. There's a great question in the chat of how did the pandemic impact the launch of your career?
I think for me, it kind of helped personally. It just so happened that we were all home, and job openings were happening, and they were virtual anyway. So because I was interested in doing research, I was not really put in a position to have to change up what I was doing already to enter the workforce. That was my personal experience. But it's also changing now, which is a little scary. So we'll see what happens.
For me, I started here in July of 2019. So I had been in this career for about 7-8 months when the pandemic happened. So I felt like I didn't get that long without the pandemic. And since I do clinical, direct client contact, it didn't necessarily change my career launch, but it changed my job completely, because for a while we actually went virtual 100% from home just for a couple of months, but then we came back in pretty quickly, which was good because I have a client population that not everyone has access to even a phone. And so it really kind of made us kind of have to rethink and change how we provided services effectively to our clients.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that it changed my career launch, but I would say it's changed my satisfaction with my career. I am working at an organization that has moved to a total virtual organization, and that would not have happened had it not been for the pandemic really accelerating that path. I think, organizations are really starting to play around with what sort of a hybrid model, you can work, 1 day a week from home, maybe in some organizations, not so much in the clinical setting, but in sort of other spaces. And I think that it really sort of challenged organizations, agencies to step up their technology, step up their ability to sort of rethink what the office looks like. And I have been a lot happier, in my roles, even at child welfare. When I started at child welfare, everyone had a desktop. When I left child welfare, everyone had an iPad and a laptop computer. And that would have never happened in the child welfare space had it not been for the pandemic. Really sort of, it would have happened, but maybe 10 years down the road, and I think that I obviously that the pandemic had some terrible and harsh realities that, impacted and devastated globally, families, but also like I think it really reshaped and pushed people to rethink how we work, and how what we expect of others, and the grace that we give others around, to use the very general term, work-life balance. And I think that has, personally for me, made me a bit more comfortable and a bit more, into my work, I would say.
Great. Thank you all for sharing all of that. And another question from the chat, and folks can continue to put questions into the chat and use the Q&A box if you'd like. So the next question is, what was something that you learned in the field that you might have felt that the school did not adequately prepare you for?
I can go first. I would say in general, being in field is something that you can't be adequately prepared for in the classroom. And so it's not so much that I felt they didn't do it in school. It's just, you would sit in like the intro to individuals class and learn how to properly ask questions and how to, actively listen and all those things. And it was, practicing was helpful, but once you got out into the community, it was on a whole nother level. And so just being able to actually take those things and implement them, like it was one of those things, like there was only so much you can do in the classroom. But then once I was out in the field placement, it's like you're actually putting it into action, which is challenging. But one of the things that I appreciated was that you could come back to, especially your first year, because you're in this field placement for the first time. So what helped was that we would actually like be in that, I think it's like individual counseling or whatever class anyways, but then we would come back and we would talk about situations from our field placement and be able to like talk through them. And that was very, very helpful.
I would say I got a little bit of exposure to this, but having tough conversations, we practice and we read and we look at case studies, and I think that's all helpful. But it was a very different experience when I was in front of an angry parent or an angry child that I just didn't know what to do. And so, thinking back to a situation where I was interviewing a child and they got so upset that they just walked out. I didn't talk about that, and I didn't have sort of the, and maybe that's just a part of life, right? Like you just learn as you grow and experience things. There's only so much that, school and books and lessons can sort of prep you. But I think having that time and space to maybe reflect on like if a client or a situation or a conversation does not go in the way that you had anticipated, how do you sort of in real time regroup and sort of pivot in a way that can still get a positive or a productive outcome. I think we had conversations around that, but I think I didn't really learn that until I was in the field directly with people that were not sort of actors portraying a role or classmates sort of portraying a role, but real people with real situations.
I would say that I got to take classes that I think prepared me for quite a bit of things, but I also fully acknowledge that there were one section of these classes. So it just so happened that I recognized that the manager for EAP, you had to take supervision. You could take a supervision class and another manager class, and then you could get a management healthcare certification. So I was taught things that my peers were not being taught, and I made sure to then recommend those classes to people that were coming in behind me because of how much my friends who had graduated, who were already working, or just supervisors that I had just didn't know this stuff. And it was like, wait, you can be taught how to do this job properly. This is problematic because 70% of us are becoming managers, but we don't really get taught how to be a manager. I think also, and I did clinical and macro, I was an EAP specialization. It's now work in the workplace or occupational social work. And one thing I felt like a lot of people were being put in a position to be in charge, but if you don't take those classes, you don't know how to be in charge. And then on the clinical tip, we had some clinical classes, but if you were EAP or any specialization that wasn't solely about therapy, you didn't really get a lot of practice and actually provided therapy. Like, and if you were in field, like Elizabeth said, it was your responsibility to be these people's therapist, and you're like, oh snap, I'm learning how to be a therapist in real time, and you have real life, and I have to really help you. And I think that's actually why field seminar became a thing. But I think there's even like more. I wasn't a year that I was able to take field seminar, but I think some organizing that we did led to field seminar existing, and like saying out loud, like I wasn't the most prepared. It would have been nice to have a space to go back and talk to someone about what happened, how that's not necessarily a mandatory thing that all intro professors are doing or all advanced clinical interventions professors are doing. So having that extra space was really helpful. Yeah, and I think public allies kind of uses that model, that is, go into the field, do the work, come back to us, let's talk about how we can help you do these processes. And I would say that if it wasn't for public allies, I wouldn't have been able to help people through the things that they didn't feel like they were able to get through at field. As a student organizer and a student leader, I spent a lot of time talking people through how to make their field situation a better place. And even if it was their field instructor that they were talking to, how to have those conversations. So I think that goes kind of full circle back to learning how to manage and be a manager and manage up. It was just those 2 classes where I learned this information, and in EAP classes, but those aren't classes that are really widespread. So it was interesting to me that those were in my course guide, but a person that was doing a more clinical family and child specialization, which I know is actually going away, wouldn't have gotten that experience. No, not in a bad way, in a good way. Like going away as in you don't have to pick the certain thing. You can look at the classes and choose what you can kind of make your own, specialize your education, which is dope. Congratulations, school social work. Good job. Good job for making that change. But yeah, that's my take on how school prepared me for the field.
And one thing I want to add, one thing that was very helpful to me and I was very fortunate to be a part of was the BHWise program, which was the fellowship program. And once a month, we would actually get together and we would have a speaker, and then we might talk about a specific case and read through it and really dig into it, almost like a mini case conference that we do here at work sometimes now. And that was really, really helpful.
I just wanted to, I mean, MJ, you hit some really good points, and so I think you're sparking some good conversation too. But like, I can't emphasize that enough. Like, management and supervision, it matters. And I'm looking at Nancy's question too. That like, you were absolutely right. Like, we have social workers, we have clinicians that are moving up into supervisor and manager roles, and they are not prepared to manage people. It is one thing to be an all-star social worker where you're sort of knocking things out of the park with your clients, you're a leader and a go-to person on your team, and everyone looks up to you and respects you. It's another thing to move into an actual management role where you have to hold people accountable. And that is where I've seen so many people fail. I've seen solid social workers move into supervisor roles and just completely fizzle out. And it's sad because 1, it didn't have to be that way. 2, we just lost a good social worker. And 3, we've messed up team morale. And all that could have been addressed if we start training people, or at least having conversations on what it means to be a supervisor, or what it means to manage people in this field at the social work school level, and that those are opportunities that are sort of helpfully within their jobs. They're given those opportunities to learn and grow that. And unfortunately, that's just not the case. So we invest very little in really preparing people to move into those management roles. And I think that's a big detriment to our space, I feel.
And the question from Nancy was in the chat was, do folks think that management training during school management education should be mandatory? And I'll add on to Nancy's question, or do you think there's another way that people can be encouraged to develop those skills, either through mandatory classes or some other way to prepare people for those roles?
I think I have this conversation with my friend all the time, because like I think social work sleeps on itself as it relates to being a game changer in the human service and just like all the professions, like medical, dentistry, law. I think social work sleeps on its ability to be in charge and be the leader in a lot of things that people like. Health disparities are what social work is. And public health and medicine think they're doing something by making people go to the like all-day fair that touches on how you address health disparities. And it's like, yeah, you're doing something because you guys weren't, but we're like not doing that now. And I think social work teaches us to do that. And because the stats are that 70% of us that graduate with MSW wind up in a managerial position within 2 years, it's kind of like you can't. Making the mandatory education more extensive will stifle a lot of people's ability to finish it. It's a beneficial that the degree is only 2 years, and in some cases can be done in 1 year. And you can go into the field, you can do the work that's really good. But I think we kind of do ourselves a disservice in that we have the basis for the education that leads to people being more prepared to do what they'll actually be challenged to do, and what they have the skills to do if it was able to be developed a little more. So me and my friend are always talking about if social work should expand itself to also incorporate, just to be a longer program. So people that choose to can get that additional knowledge, so they're more prepared to be in the field. And even field being more of like a residency, because we, like I said, we really get thrown into doing very real work. And while we know we do it and we care, we don't really get the props or get paid. Like literally, most of us don't get paid to even do it. So I think it should be mandatory, but I think it'll be a hard push to make that a reality when such a benefit, one of the biggest benefits, is how quickly you can get into the field and have the graduate degree. Yeah, education.
Yeah. I think a small step though would be just integrating those conversations in our classes. Like, yeah, I would love to see a management track, or, some more solid classes that are offered to students. But I think a small thing is just sort of talking about, in the different classes that are, this applies to, like what it means to sort of lead teams and manage people. And I think we shy away from that. Like, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard, individuals say like, I'm not good at, I became a social worker, I'm not good with money, or like, I'm not good with money, that's why I became a social worker. I'm like, no, we need to be good with money because we're going to be leading organizations and we're going to be in charge of finances. And like, I lead budgets right now, and like, luckily, previous jobs have taught me how to read budgets, but yeah, my team submits budgets to me and I have to approve them. And I can't say to them, I can't approve this because I'm a social worker. Like we develop those skills and we develop those, sort of push ourselves to grow in areas. And I think that has to be a part of this conversation. And I think, it starts with just doing that, like talking about what it means to be in this space and how you want to lead and ways that you think things should be changed, and sort of helping process that and really equipping people with the skills that they can, and sort of like building out a toolkit that they can rely back on when they find themselves in those manager roles, that is inevitable.
And it might be, now let me preface this with, this might already exist. And maybe Shantae and her team at Continuing are already doing this some, but maybe like doing like some more continuing ed opportunities on like going into management, like not just necessarily being a supervisor of other social worker supervisors, which is super important and something that I know that you guys do and that some of us are working towards, but also maybe like doing some management stuff. And again, that may already be out there, but maybe just encouraging that more, pushing that more, just might be another opportunity. Because I agree with MJ, like it's hard. It's like a 2-year program and you only have so much time. Like there were so many classes I didn't take that I wish I would have taken. And if there was like another opportunity to do like how nursing, they have like you can get your like BSW, or you can do like the master's in clinical leadership track. Like maybe there's, I mean, I know this is like very big picture, but maybe there is something like that for social workers. And I think for those who want it, because not everybody necessarily wants it, and not everybody should be a manager. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but some people really want that and some people don't. And some people are skilled at it and some people have their gifts in other places. So giving that as an opportunity, if maybe there was like some intro to it, and then giving it as an opportunity for those who wanted it, I think could be really awesome.
The school actually did start an organizational leadership track. Last 2022 or 2021, that track started. It was surreal because it was like, this is literally why I'm here for 3
I'm
years.
jealous. I know. I want that. I wish I had that.
I'm happy for you guys, but
As somebody who went straight into being an executive director of a nonprofit after finishing social work school, I wish that had been there when I was there. I kind of pieced together some courses to get what I needed to do. But also, one of the things I'm thinking of in regards to Nancy's question is thinking about what opportunities might exist within organizations that employ social workers. If we know, as MJ has said a number of times, that 70% of social workers do end up in these management positions, that I think there's also the responsibility of employers to be preparing people for these leadership tracks and thinking of the professional development of their employees, because of just the trajectory that many, and that also I think speaks to Elizabeth's point that some people do want to develop those skills and go on that track, but maybe not everybody. So I think that also thinking of if there's ways that the school can support workplaces and developing those professional development plans. Great conversation, y'all, really enjoying it. And Judy saying that Department of Human Services has a surprisingly good supervisory training. There was also a question in the chat about mentorship, the role of mentors in your career thinking. Would any of you like to speak to the role of mentorship?
I'm unmuted, so I'll talk, even though that's not why I was unmuted. I think this isn't everybody's personality, but I'm gonna talk, as you can see, I'm a pretty talkative person. And like I said, I was a organizer while I was a student. So I got to build a lot of relationships with people, and to be honest, attempting to utilize my mentorship a little more, something that I'm like personally working on. But I do know that they are there, and it is an avenue that I like plan to and have explored in the past. Like I literally have this job because I was working on a project with someone else while I was in school. And I'm here because of Public Allies, which was through SWACOs. And I think they take a very hands-on route to pushing us, like getting us through the program and like staying a part of our lives if we decide that. So personally, yeah, it's a big part of my career aspiration.
I appreciate that question because it makes me think like, oh, maybe I should like ask somebody to officially be my mentor. I do feel like I have access to a lot of amazing people. Working in the dean's office, I'm still in touch with those folks, and that's been a great resource. Some of them being social workers. My field placement supervisors, I know I can still go to if I need anything. And then I have a really amazing people that I work with here at Grace Medical Center. Some of them are social workers, some of them are counselors, but I'm constantly learning from them daily. But I do like the idea of thinking like, mentorship. I think I'm also older, so like I'm almost 40. So I am kind of coming at it from like, okay, well, what do I want the next 20 years to look like? And so kind of thinking about it from that perspective, like maybe getting a mentor who is a little older that could kind of lead me in that direction as I figure out like, am I going to stay in clinical, or am I going to somehow combine my fundraising background with that one day and get into a leadership position? So I appreciate the question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got really lucky, coming out of social work, and was matched with some really great supervisors. And so my initial supervisor, when I graduated, it was amazing, is amazing. And she's been someone that I can just talk to on a regular basis while I was still at the organization. I just left child welfare in May of this year. And so, I'm no longer with Montgomery County Child Welfare, but she was somebody that was a go-to person, even when she was no longer my supervisor, that I just sort of trusted her opinion and judgment, and the way that she approached things and how she modeled the behaviors of, a social work supervisor, a leader in this space, a manager in this space. I learned so much. And so that just sort of happened, which I really appreciate. The other thing I would say, sort of reshaping how we look at mentorship, like peer mentorships have been really important. I think that, especially like joining a team of CPS social workers, I was instantly put with a group of people who were doing things and modeling things that like I wanted to just sort of pick up. And I think in particular, there's one relationship that, actually I met this person at the school of social work. We just became really good friends, ended up joining the same team of social workers. And, he and I just meet monthly and talk. And even after I've left, even while I was there, but even after I've left, we just continue that up, like just this monthly, go out for a drink or lunch or something that has just been so important for me, like not only professionally, but personally. It's just like, I need that outlet, particularly in this space with the issues and topics that we're dealing with. And so I would, encourage, like, if you have somebody that's even at the peer level that is just like your go-to person, like cultivate that relationship. That's also a mentorship right there. And I think one that can be really valuable moving forward.
I think that's actually a great segue into a question that Judith asked in the Q&A about how you feel about being in an all remote workplace. And she elevates concerns about isolation and how camaraderie with peers was an important part of her career, and concern about diminished opportunities for cross-learning from peers. So I was wondering if there's anything you'd like to speak to about the differences between a remote workplace and an in-person workplace with that kind of development.
I can start. It's definitely different, I mean, being in a space where like I think social work so much is like you vibe off of that sort of in-person sort of interactions and conversation. You just pick up so much that it's been, difficult to do this work even at the macro level in a virtual setting. I think, again, we have come a long way. I'm on Teams all day. Chatting with folks through the chat system, doing quick video calls, and so I think that has made it, and we've all just gotten so used to Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Skype, or other platforms. And so I think it has made it workable or doable. But, me personally, I'm somebody that just like does like going into the office at least like once a week. And so still find ways to try and, switch things up and connect with others. I think the other thing that I've been learning too is how to manage in a virtual setting. And so, my team, they're all over the country, one's in Florida, one's in Georgia, one's in North Carolina. And so that has really, I think, been a new thing that I've had to learn and grow in, is like, not only, this is my first time direct supervising people, but, supervising people in a virtual setting, I think has had to, has really pushed me to develop a whole new set of skills in terms of making myself available, asking direct questions, and being a bit more clear. And yeah, I don't know if I've answered the question, but that's kind of my thoughts on it so far.
Right. Yeah, I just wanted to ask those questions back to back because you were speaking to about the mentorship. About it seems like you have found ways to develop that camaraderie, and that's been my experience as well. When I started out of school, my workplace was completely in person. I even made jokes about we can't do the work that we kind of do remote because, there's always this conversation before the pandemic about whether you could do the work remote. And I would say, oh, people can't, talk to people on the phone about their mental health while they're sitting on the couch with the dog barking and they're in their pajamas talking about people's mental health. And somehow we found a way to do it. So, and in terms of the team connections that Judith rose, our team has grown. When the pandemic started, we had 5. We're now up to 16 staff members, and our team is really close knit through the venues that Anthony was mentioning, with the virtual ways of connecting, but also people find ways to, we try to get together in person as a team every few months with different social activities. And it's been really great for me to see friendships among our team flourish in ways when I find out, oh yeah, I saw so-and-so for lunch the other day. And so people have found ways to get together. Most of our team is in Maryland, so they're able to do things like that if they'd like. So I think that it's definitely different than we were all in person, but I think we've found ways to make those connections. And then Heather had a question in the Q&A for everybody of what changes would you like to make to be able to better serve your clients?
Oh my gosh, so many. Well, I think one of that is just resources. Being able, I wish, I'm an outpatient mental health therapist, but I end up doing a portion of case management. We do have a case management team here at Grace Medical Center, but I do kind of some more intro case management with folks. And just, I wish that I could connect them to resources faster, that the systems worked better, all those things, that we had more resources that we could give. So that's a start. One way that I have learned, and this is very much a personal journey for me as a clinician, but like, I have to take care of myself. And being a social worker, a therapist is so different than any other job I've ever done, and more fulfilling, but harder in different ways. So if I'm not practicing self-care, and literally practicing what I preach to my clients, then I'm not the best therapist that I can be. But I'm learning that it's going to be like a lifelong journey figuring out the self-care piece, because it is very hard. And I think going back to being a change maker, when you're in social work school, like, you're there because you want to make a difference. And so I think we all do what we do because we want to make a difference, and I want to help my clients and I want to be there for them. But and it sounds so basic, but if I'm not taking care of myself, then I can't be there for them. And that is just someone who's a perfectionist, who is a go-getter, who always wants to go, go, go. I've had to really learn that, and I'm continuing to learn that. So that's been big for me.
I would say my clients are like direct service providers, like are my clients, from people doing programming, to therapists, to health department employees on grant teams. And I think improving how we manage and improving how organizations respect and care about their employees is something that I would really like to see change. I think having the option for virtual work has really allowed people to have different home lives, which I think how much stuff, I think having a virtual work life is really important, or being an option, and working less work days. I think there's a lot of work that America could do in the direction of treating their employees better. So those are some things that I would like to see change for sure.
Yeah, totally agree. And, again, I'm working not directly with families and youth anymore. I'm in a setting or role where I'm working with providers who are, providing substance use and mental health services. And so I agree. And I think one of the things that I'm really particularly interested in addition to the workforce development and training, which I think is a really key piece, sort of integrated care, and really thinking about how we could have systems and organizations and agencies talk to one another, how we can sort of offer multiple services within one setting. I think about, this is just a small example, but like I with my last job, I had Kaiser as my health insurance, and like the ability to have access to all different services within one setting, I think was really important and key. And I think taking that same approach to the social work space, I think about when I was a CPS social worker, how hard it was for me to like get someone from our housing department on the phone, to get someone from our like crisis services on the phone, or like to coordinate, I need to pay this person's security deposit. How can I go through this system? And like, we were literally employees of Department of Health and Human Services, but I felt like there were so many sort of different walls that were built up around me being able to navigate that space. I can't imagine what it was like then as a client or a family. And I think that same approach to my work now is really important, is how can I work to make organizations, agencies, how can my work help facilitate easier, streamlined conversations, so that we can better the experience for the client. That's sort of what my main focus is on right now. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about a lot.
Another question, and just so folks know, we have about 10 more minutes left for Q&A. So if you have additional questions, now's your time to get them in. We'll probably, just at the pace we've been going, be able to do 2 or 3 more questions before we have to wrap up. So if there's anything burning on your mind, now's your chance. The next one is, what should the future of social work licensing exams look like, especially considering the racial disparity data that recently came out? And so I want to just check with the panelists to make sure that you all are familiar with what the questioner is speaking to. Is this something that I'm not seeing nodding heads? So I could give a brief overview, and then if this is something we want to talk about, but if it's not something you came prepared to speak about, we might skip this one. But the Association of Social Work boards recently, back in August, released the data on the social work exams, and they had the pass rates broken down by racial groups, and there were very large disparities between racial groups, showing that white folks had the highest pass rates, and then showing disparities particularly among Black, Latino, Latina, Latinx, Latinx folks, and African American test takers and Native American test takers, and so showing much lower pass rates. And so there's been a lot of organizing efforts recently around either doing away with the exams completely, or the way that they formulate the tests is to get they poll social workers in the field for the test questions, and they white folks are disproportionately polled in terms of getting what the question data is going to be, and so then it's skewed towards white social work experiences is what the situation is currently. So so there's been efforts to either abolish the test completely or make the test matter more representative of the experiences of the diversity of social work professionals. So that's what this question is speaking to. Would any of you have opinions on that or thoughts on that?
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for that summary of what's going on, for sure. Definitely needed it. I would say, similar to how assessing social work sleeps on itself, we can't get rid of the license exam because people already don't respect social workers as therapists and clinicians. And sadly, as much as I'm, yes, get rid of all these tests, but if other licensed clinicians and therapists and counselors do not, then I think that would just increase the disparity. And I also think getting rid of it would kind of just be a cop-out for the board to not have to do a better job at not being racist and being more equitable in how the questions are collected. I also think that's really interesting because coming from University of Maryland as opposed to Morgan, University of Maryland has a really high pass rate. Morgan does not. And within University of Maryland, I could say that my Black friends have had to retake the test more than I know my white friends had, or white peers, Black versus Black peers. So just how, I think that goes back to the questions that are being asked. So I think if we were asking a better group of people the questions, then we would see a change in how many people are passing. But I also think it's really interesting that how I think University of Maryland really prepares you to pass the test, as opposed to a school like Morgan, I think has a better relation. Their social workers have a better relationship with social work and feel really connected to their school and the work itself. But I don't think that they are teaching towards the test and how that might show up in various places that people of color are going to social work school. And what pass rate, like I think that shows, that's something that friends and I have talked about, how it's like, oh snap, well, we pass the test because that's what they teach us, and they not get taught to pass the test. So that was interesting on my end.
Yeah, I think those are all really interesting points. Thank you again for the summary too. And I think about, so I did take my LMSW right outside of graduating because I had to for my job. And then I ended up getting my LCSWC last fall. And I'm not surprised by the data. And I think that's pretty consistent with like other exams and things that we see. I 100% agree that I don't think that we should get away with do away with the exam, because I think, again, we talk about credibility, we talk about sort of like continuing to make people realize and understand the value of the field of social work and the expertise of the field of social work. And I think that licensing exams like that only sort of help to get to that. But I think beyond sort of the information on the exam, I think about the fact that I work for an agency that paid for a class. Not everybody has that luxury. I had the resources to pay all this money, which I'm still a little frustrated by, but to pay this money to like not only renew my LMSW, but to pay for, the licensing credentials for my LCSW exam. And while I was very fortunate, I understand that not everybody is in that situation where they can just sort of drop a few $100s, in real time to like, to sign up for those classes, especially if you have to, you find yourself in a situation where you don't pass it on the first time. That's energy, that's money, that's resources, and that's that really can kind of take a toll on you. But I guess all that to say, I think sort of addressing and building opportunities to find some type of funding assistance for individuals, particularly communities of color, I think are underrepresented communities in this field. And I also think finding about having conversations around how we're training people, or the training programs that we're offering folks, and addressing access and barriers to those types of programs, I think are also going to be key and go a long way in helping people, particularly, again, communities of color, sort of have more successful pass rates. It shouldn't be depending on which job that you get that you have, access to this kind of material. But it's sort of just the way that it is right now.
Yeah, thank you also, Amy, for that summary. Yeah, I agree with both MJ and Anthony. Like, I don't think they can do away with the test. I think if they don't address the questions being unfair and being asked more to white people, that's a disservice to the social work industry as a whole. Like, that just goes against everything that we are supposed to stand for. And so they really need to do a better job with equalizing it. And yeah, like, I obviously don't have the answer, but it's something that I think they absolutely need to address. And I don't think those exams should be gotten rid of.
And there's lots of social workers in the greater Baltimore and Maryland area that are working on advocacy on this topic. And I know that Greater Washington Clinical Society had a CEU training that's either coming up or was just in the past week on this topic. And that's worth checking out too. So there's a lot of it. There's some petitions circulating that you might be able to find to better just get an overview of what the issues at play are. So I'd really encourage folks to check that out if this is a topic of interest. We have about 2 minutes left and I'm not seeing any other questions. So I was wondering if we could wrap up with if any of you have received advice that you found helpful in your career from more seasoned social workers in the field. What advice and words of wisdom have you received that you would want to pass on to others?
I'll go real quick. I think two things. One, there's only so much you can control. At the end of the day, you're one person, and give yourself a little bit of grace and credit. Like, there's only so much you can do. There's only so much you can control, and so I just don't think it's worth stressing out every single day about a particular thing. Like, the work will be there tomorrow, and it's okay to step away and take some time for yourself. I also just want to emphasize, like, just know the value and the importance of social work. There are so many ways that you can be a social worker, and people really, really value our perspective, our insight, and our expertise. Know what that's worth.
Yeah, I second that 100%. It was going to be value our field. And I know that it might not always, like, you might have a bad supervisor, you might have a bad organization, but don't accredit that to the field being broken in the same way we don't see a bad doctor as like the medical field being completely broken. So just kind of like, there's a meme everybody here is an adult, so, and I don't really feel like code switching that much, but there's like an audio that's like, think big, bitch. You're thinking small. You gotta think big. We gotta think big. And even when we get stopped, we have to know that we're getting stopped because people are thinking smaller, not because we're wrong. So value ourselves as social workers and value our field, and don't be afraid to like think big and know that we can like do better.
And I think for me, I know I already mentioned self-care. That's quite a journey. It's super important. And then also, this has been a really hard one for me, but like not working harder than the client. And they would say that in school, and it almost makes me feel guilty saying it, like, oh my God, that's horrible. But you have to meet the client where they are. And if they're not ready for what maybe is a clear and obvious healthy next step, like then they're not ready. And so that I beat myself up a lot about that. So I'm like, well, why can't I help them get to this place, and just meeting them where they are and walking alongside them and understanding that they have to be in it as much as you are. And again, that's a hard thing. And I even feel weird saying it, but it's something I'm learning.
Well, I want to thank each of the panelists and all of the participants for coming out and asking such wonderful questions today. You will be getting your continuing education certificates from the CPE office, so check those out in your email if you registered for the CEUs. I'm going to hand it back to Krishna to close us out.
I mean, honestly, what a panel. You all were amazing. And I'm not just saying that because I know you all, I'm saying you all were amazing. And thank you, Amy, for moderating the panel today. And I think one of the things, if I didn't have a takeaway, this is my takeaway from this panel. And again, I'm not a social worker, but if you can't see the extent or the breadth and depth of this field just by listening to the three panelists along with our moderator, I don't know what else. You should be proud to be a social worker. So, and I'm proud to know you all. So I want to thank you all for attending. And I'm putting the link for our final critical convo in the chat. I hope you can join us next week, October 25th. And so I want to thank you all, Anthony, MJ, Elizabeth, and Amy, for putting on such a great lunchtime chat. It was really great to hear from you all, and I hope you all enjoyed it. And thank you all for coming. Look at us. We got 3 minutes. 3 minutes. We made it.
Krishna was giving me time warnings in the chat.
I know, right? I'm like, oh my goodness. It was such a great conversation, right? Like, I love the like it just organically happened. So I appreciate that. And so thank you all for attending today. And MJ, don't forget, you got restaurants that you got to check out in the chat. So
I wrote 3
again,
of them down.
right. And also you'll get the survey, I believe, from CPE, but you'll also get one from our development office because we always want to hear back from you all. So again, thank you all for attending, and thank you all for participating, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.